Shazam?
Peacemaker. What a joke.
I'm nobody. I came because I have no choice. I came to save my home and the people that I love.
Truth, justice,
the American way.
I'm vengeance.
Hello and welcome to Elseworlds, a DC fan podcast, which is presented by To the Infinity Saga and Beyond MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and joining me for the first time on this show is Jack, my good friend Jack. How are you today, Jack?
Very good. A little tired, but still ready to talk some DC and especially Peacemaker.
Yes, we are going to be talking some Peacemaker. What a joke. What a great show, right?
Yep.
We're going to be talking some Peacemaker. We'll kind of start off with the history of the character. We'll go into some of our thoughts on the Suicide Squad, and then we'll go into, you know, where that kind of left Christopher Smith leading into the show, and then, you know, his journey on this show and some of the new characters that we've been introduced to on the show, which was, for me, a pleasant surprise. I mean, I knew before I saw Suicide Squad, James Gunn was making Peacemaker, and you know, I bought a Peacemaker shirt before going to see Suicide Squad. I was very excited for John Cena's Peacemaker. Ended up hating him at the end. And then I was kind of like, I'm not so sure I'm excited for a show about this guy. And I was, you know, January 13th rolls around. I was kind of dreading it. And I was like, all right, let's see what the show is, right? And I watched it before going to see my fourth showing of Spider-Man. And watched like the first episode or two, and because they released 3 at once. And then really fell in love with the show. And, you know, thankfully, it, you know, he just... a show that I wasn't expecting much from, even after seeing the trailers and stuff, that I ended up really enjoying this show to where I think no matter what Marvel puts out this year, this is probably the top show of 2022 for me. So let's start with Jack here. You haven't been on any of our... I think I've only done 3 of these DC Elseworlds episodes anyway. But so I'm going to ask you just a general question. Your favorite DC character? And then after that, we'll ask you more about the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. But I know you're not a big Batman or Superman guy, so who's your DC character?
Yeah, well, I've got to admit, I didn't watch like a ton of DC EU stuff. Honestly, I watched the first Suicide Squad. Mistake. That took me away from watching a lot of DC stuff for a little bit. But then I decided to give the Suicide Squad a chance. I was coming home from Florida, and it was just on the plane, and I was like, you know what? I remember seeing all the trailers for this, and so I watched that, and I was kind of hooked on it. And then I heard about this Peacemaker show, and then I watched that on the way back from the airport. So I started watching it there. I just realized I went the wrong direction in these two questions, but
it's okay. It's okay.
Favorite DC character? Most of the DC characters I know come from Injustice. I played that on the Wii U because I didn't have an Xbox or PlayStation. So my favorite of those, I really liked Deathstroke. He seemed like a funny, sarcastic type of character, like Deadpool. I'm guessing there's something to do with that they're connected in some way. But I also do like the Flash. I like the Flash. I think out of the Justice League members, he's probably my favorite of them. You know, I love the suit. I feel like he's probably the most. He feels, despite having maybe one of the craziest superpowers, feels the most human. If that makes sense. But Yeah, I do like him as well.
Who was that you mentioned at the end? Flash and who?
A Flash. That yeah,
Just Flash.
I
Okay.
like the
Okay.
Flash. Yep, just Flash. Yeah, Green Lantern maybe a little bit, but I don't know enough about him really to beyond the Injustice games.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess they use Hal Jordan in that, right?
Yes, yeah.
In the Injustice games. I've never played those. I've heard good things about them, but it sounds like it's another Superman goes evil plot line, which I'm kind of
Mhm.
tired of.
The first one is at least. It is a good story. I did enjoy the story, but if you're tired of that plot line, you're not gonna like it very
Well,
much.
the only reason we're tired of it, and most Superman fans are tired of it, is because it's really the only storyline that DC has really done in every, like, they did a lot of comics about it, they've done the game about it, they've done, the Zack Snyder Justice League movie is about was setting up an evil Superman. It's just something that they've continually done in all branches of media that you're like, okay, well, how about just like the happy-go-lucky Superman? Where's he at?
Like from the 90s or like 80s, 70s,
Yeah.
those movies. Yeah.
Right.
I remember
yeah.
watching those. I do
he
remember
at?
those.
But you're right. Deadpool is connected to Deathstroke. Deathstroke was made by DC Comics, and Deadpool was made as like a parody of Deathstroke and Marvel's Deathstroke, and then it kind of took on more of a fourth wall breaking type of character later on. So, but yeah, so I thought it was interesting because I think on one of the Marvel shows we had done, I had asked if you were going to see Suicide Squad. I think it was like back before the movie came out, and you had then mentioned about how you didn't really care for the DC stuff. I was like, it's James Gunn, it's gonna be great. And then just randomly on your trip back, I got a message saying that you watched Peacemaker and Suicide Squad. I was like, oh, great. So it was just on the flight on the Delta. Is that who you took, right?
Yeah. I was just on Delta, so I guess shout out to Delta for getting me into this. They don't really need the advertisement or anything like that, but either way,
I'll
that's
tag
how
them
I
in
saw
the
it.
episode.
Yeah, that's how I found it. On the way there, I watched Psycho because I had to for a class, and then on the way back, I was just like, I want a fun movie. I want a really fun one after seeing, Psycho. So
Is that where you watch it on your phone, or is it like on a
no,
TV?
It's on the TV, like on the back of the seat. Yeah.
Okay, because
So-
Southwest has like a on your phone.
Oh, okay.
You sign into what their Wi-Fi, and they have free movies, free live TV, free TV shows, and they have like a list of them. And so that's how I watched Aquaman on my way down. So I took a page from Jack, and I was like, oh, I haven't watched Aquaman. I'm a fan of both DC and Marvel. Why not? I've heard good things. I own it. I even own it. Haven't sat down to watch it ever. And I was like, let's just sit down and see how it is. And I watched it on my flight. And you know what? It took the whole flight. And by the time the credits are rolling, we're landing. So that was fun.
Yeah. So the main thing that when I was like scrolling through, because they have like hundreds of movies on that, I remember the ads from the scene in the Suicide Squad. I guess spoilers if you haven't seen that, but if you're watching an episode on Peacemaker, I'm assuming you probably have seen that. The scene where Nanaue is talking to Peacemaker about the bomb that he made that looks like him. And I remember that ad so distinctly because it popped up on like every single YouTube video and every single show I watched.
Did it really?
It did. I have no idea why, but so I just remembered that. And I was like, it looked like it could be funny. So I booted up and it was a good decision.
Yeah, that is a good. I don't even remember that being in trailers. That's pretty funny. But
yeah, it was just a random 5-second ad. I feel like that just premiered in front of some videos, and it was like an unskippable one. So it just kind of implanted
stuck
it
in your
into
head.
the brain.
Yeah, there you go. That's how they get you.
That's how they get.
It's funny though. You mentioned if they're listening to an episode about Peacemaker, they probably watch Suicide Squad. But what's funny is this guy at work I work with. He was like, "Hey, did you watch Peacemaker?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we're talking about Peacemaker, and he's like, I said something about Suicide Squad. He's like, oh, I haven't had a chance to watch that yet. I was like, well, this kind of like unfortunately spoils Suicide Squad for you. Like, that sucks. But I think there are some people that just heard the good news about it. I mean, looking at, I sent you an article yesterday or a tweet from James Gunn that I'm trying to find here because I partially sent it to you so you can see it, and then I was also like, oh, I can refer to this, on the show and not
It had
lose
the biggest viewing of any HBO
single
Max
day. Yep. Best single day performance of a Max original series and finale viewing was up 44% over the premiere. That's pretty good. And now, of course, we have to qualify it with Max original because there are still some shows on HBO Max that are HBO originals. So you have like Euphoria. This probably didn't outdo Euphoria.
Probably
It
not.
probably didn't outdo Succession or any of like those big HBO shows, but those are technically HBO originals that also premiere on HBO Max. So I'm thinking they mean an actual Max original, which are what like the I think a Max original is like the Sex and the City spinoff. So it's doing better than that. Which is amazing because I actually don't think I see that many people talk about this show. Like, you are literally the only person I know, and the guy at work are the only two people I know that watch Peacemaker, and it's insane.
Yeah, and then for me, the only other person I know who watches it is, besides you, obviously, is my dad. So he and I have watched it a little bit, and been trying to get some family members and friends in. I went out with a friend last night, talked to him about the show, and he hopefully is going to give it a shot. I hyped it up. So
where does AJ sit on this? Where do we?
I haven't asked him about it yet. We've got to get him on board to watch it. It's a good show.
Yeah, I've been trying to get people to. I say it's James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now the thing is, it is a little gruesome. So there are times where I think people would have, like, my wife can't watch it. She can't watch any of those, and I think my parents couldn't really. Like, my parents, we went to see Suicide Squad, and they were kind of a little grossed out, I think, at times with it. Like, my mom sat next to me. I could just feel her like cringing and stuff. But all right, let's get into the history of the character. I just want to kind of cover this too for people that don't know Peacemaker outside of the show. He first appeared so originally he was created for Charlton Comics, and for an espionage team named Fightin' Five. And they had Fightin' Five issue 40. November 1966 was his first appearance. When the series was canceled the next issue, he received his own line that lasted 5 issues in 67. And then Charlton Comics fell apart in the mid-'80s, and DC Comics acquired Peacemaker and a lot of other Charlton Comics characters and released a 4-issue miniseries January through April of 1988. So some, not an original DC creation. He didn't really start joining them till the 80s. And it just shows the obscure characters James Gunn is picking out for some of these. Like, I had known King Shark, I had known Harley Quinn, New Rick Flag, all those pretty much staples. But Polka Dot Man I had heard of as a joke. Like, people mention him as a joke. Bloodsport was not very popular or well known. Peacemaker, did not know anything about him before the movie. And Ratcatcher, did not know anything about Ratcatcher or Ratcatcher 2 in before the movie came out. So and then of course you have all the ones that get killed off. Javelin, Blackguard, like TDK,
Captain Boomerang, yeah.
Captain Boomerang, I knew him. He's a pretty big Flash villain. But these other ones are just characters I had no idea about, and I actually like that. It lets these other characters take a moment to shine and get a chance to learn new characters that, when they relaunched the Suicide Squad comic in 2021, Peacemaker's front and center because they just knew, like, this guy, like, is probably going to be a big hit with John Cena. And I'm not sure how much, like, the comic people get to know about where things are heading, but they probably already knew he was getting a TV show at the same time. So they're probably like, let's start putting him more front and center in some of these comics, because people are going to like him and people are going to search out for Peacemaker comics, and there's not a lot. There's not a lot of Peacemaker comics, unfortunately. I did read this like 40-page one shot. I sent you the picture of it. I forget what it's called. It's like Peacemaker. Should be on my DC Infinite. It's a little different. It doesn't show him as Peacemaker at all. It's literally him having a conversation with like a journalist and pretty much talking about his whole life and how he got there. It's called Peacemaker Disturbing the Peace. And it's before he joins the Suicide Squad. And we learn about his past, and it's a little different than what it is in this show. Like his dad is not White Dragon in the comics. And in this comic, he actually comes home from school late to find that his stepfather and his mother had killed themselves and killed the rest of the family. And he's 8 years old, and it kind of puts him on the path of being messed up. And, then he kind of hangs out, like he goes to foster home. One of his foster parents gets killed in a bank robbery. The bank robbers kind of take him, and they're like a Bonnie and Clyde type of thing. And, he ends up with them for a bit, and then again, foster home to army and all this kind of stuff. That it was really interesting read. But we didn't get to see him like suit up or anything in that comic. But it was an interesting comic to read, but very different from the Peacemaker that we know from the movie and from this show. So let's get into our thoughts about the Suicide Squad movie first before we move into the show. What was some of your expectations, I guess, going into the movie? And because I know now you've watched it like 5 times. So
Yep.
Because I think at first, like your first tweet or direct message to me was like, "Oh, it was good, right?" Like it was after a rough first 5 minutes, it was good. And then it seems like the more you watch it, the more you really liked it. So I wanted to just ask kind of what were your expectations, and then how have those changed when you revisit it?
Yeah, well, of course, like the expectation when you're watching like just a movie on a plane is just like, just something to do while, you don't have internet really, I guess.
Right.
Is the main thing. So I was just like, I want to watch a superhero movie. I've seen all these Marvel ones before. And this one seems interesting. So I went into it just with very few expectations, just, it'll be something interesting. And the plot just like felt absurd like throughout it, which I think is kind of what drew me into it. Like the fact that it just seemed so wild, and like, the shock of the first 10 minutes as well, where like they set up all of these characters to be like, a big thing. I will say I didn't like Weasel as much as Jordan did.
I know you tweeted or you messaged me and you're like, I did not like Weasel. I'm like, Weasel's so cute. Like he's so good.
Freaked me out. He freaks me out a little bit too much. It's like
and then,
Rocket
of course,
Raccoon
is
took an
James
unfortunate
Gunn's
path.
brother. Doing the motion capture for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like if Rocket Raccoon took a few rougher paths in life, that's what
get some involved in drugs or something.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. But I watched it, I enjoyed it enough, and then after watching the first few episodes of Peacemaker, I went back through it again, watched it again, and was like, this is even better this time now. And I watched a few more episodes of Peacemaker, then went back to the Suicide Squad again to watch it again, and started to notice, something that people commented about both in Peacemaker and in the Suicide Squad, which is the soundtracks, which are fantastic in both of them. And the soundtrack really makes the movie even better when you listen to that with a good ear to it. But yeah, I mean that's like that's kind of how that evolved over time, where I went into it with very little expectations, but then each time I feel like I noticed different details that were popping up, and it just got better and better.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of following along this trajectory. James Gunn gets fired for his tweets from Disney, and WB says, let's swoop in here and give him whatever he wants, which was a great decision. It probably would have worked out better if there wasn't a pandemic. I think the movie would have done better in a regular time frame, and not being on HBO Max at the same time. Like I really think it would have done better than it did. Everybody trying to say it's a flop is, it's a little rough when you're in the middle of, and even then, August was kind of like when people were starting to worry about, what was the first variant?
Delta.
Delta. There you go.
There's been enough.
We've been so Omicron now that it's like, oh yeah, Delta. That was one. Hey, and what a coincidence! You were on Delta Airline.
Yeah.
Delta is all over this. It's some sort of sign. But we get, I was following along with it back when they were filming and saw some set photos, and I'm very excited to see what it was. There was a lot of rumors about who he had, everybody kind of thought Idris Elba was going to be a recast of Will Smith's Deadshot. And I think originally, if you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff, some concept art shows Deadshot in this movie. And I'm thinking he originally wrote it with Deadshot, and because Deadshot also has a daughter, that once he couldn't get Will Smith, he decided to not recast the role, but just put in Bloodsport instead, which I think is a good move because I didn't want anything to overwrite canon of like what we've already got. I know some people like yourself don't really like the 2016 Suicide Squad. I was more okay with it. I kind of went in though with the expectation of everybody saying how bad it was, that I kind of was like, oh, this was all right. And no, it wasn't as good as this one at all or anything. But, it was kind of like, for me, I was like, oh yeah, this is like better than I thought it was going to be. And I didn't want anything to overwrite that in case, what if Will Smith can come back for another one of these? Then you can have both of them. Like, there's no reason to kind of overwrite anything. So I really liked that when I remember the day that they did their DC Fandom in August, I think it was, of 2020, we went to help my wife's friend get engaged. Like her boyfriend was like, hey, help us, we were going to be there. And it was at a corn maze type of thing. And I remember, so not great service, but I remember like, it was a hot day. We sit down to like eat after that, or like sit in the shade. And I'm like refreshing Twitter, and I see the video that James Gunn released that has like all those cool logos for all the characters and who they're playing. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't know any of these characters. This is so exciting. Like, this is awesome. And, then fast forward to the movie actually releasing in 2021. And I was, I went with my mom and dad, and my dad actually still likes the 2016 one better. He's crazy.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I was like, no, this movie was great. This is probably my favorite DC extended universe movie as it stands right now. And it was just a ball for me to watch. Now, then it was also on HBO Max, but I was like, I wanted to see this in theaters. I wanted to see it on the big screen, wanted to see all that. And then in the next day, the Saturday, I think we went and saw it on a Friday. The Saturday, I woke up early in the morning, went downstairs and watched it on my TV on HBO Max. So I watched it 2 times that weekend before my wife was up because she wouldn't want to watch it. And then, kind of left it there for a bit, and then bought it on Blu-ray. Didn't get a chance to watch it on Blu-ray before Peacemaker came out. And then, really dug that. And I was like, let's revisit the movie again. So I've only seen it, I think, 3 times. But I bought the soundtrack after the first or second time I watched it. I have a playlist that's called Suicide Squad, and it's just music from that and music from Peacemaker.
I actually have the same thing. I have one called DC Bangers, curated by James Gunn. So that's what I've got.
Yeah. I have a few playlists on here that have like superhero theme stuff. The first, I also had to go to get the score, not the whole score, but I got the Radism song because it's just my favorite song from the movie, I think.
It is really good.
It is really good. And it makes me really excited for John Murphy doing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 because he didn't do the first two. Tyler Bates did. But with his work on Suicide Squad and his work on Peacemaker, I'm like really pumped for see what he brings in. But, you know, in Suicide Squad, my favorite characters, Rick Flag, of course, I enjoyed him in 2016. I enjoyed him again in this one, and he was much better in this movie as well. And I'm glad that Gunn had some of that carryover of, oh yeah, let's bring in Joel Kinnaman and he can do Rick Flag. And we acknowledge the history between Rick, Harley, and Captain Boomerang. And that's all you need to really acknowledge, right? Like, you don't need to acknowledge a lot of the other events. Just acknowledging that acknowledges the movie, but also says we're doing something different. And that's what I liked about it, because it doesn't have to be like a trilogy or anything in the sense of a singular storyline stretched out across 3 movies or whatever. It can just be, oh, it's another Suicide Squad movie, and we're picking out these characters to continue. It kind of really felt like a comic run of, okay, these people have history, but we're not talking about that history. They just kind of mention, oh yeah, we work together, and that's all you really need to know. And so I really liked Rick Flag. I really enjoyed Bloodsport in this. Idris Elba was great in this movie. And then we get Ratcatcher 2, who again was like a scene stealer for me. And then of course I really liked Peacemaker. I really liked John Cena and Bloodsport's like banter and their relationship. And then to see that when it came to the Rick Flag fight versus Peacemaker, I was very upset because I was like, these are 2 of my favorites. I knew one of them was going to die at that point. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, well, Peacemaker's not going to die. He's got to show like this is going to suck. Rick Flag's going to die. And then we get to Bloodsport killing Peacemaker. And I'm like, well, maybe the show's a prequel then. I don't know. Like, they weren't very clear in the run up to it if it was going to be a prequel or a sequel. And I thanked them for that, because it kind of left me with, okay, maybe not. And then we get the end credit scene of, no, he's alive, which I think they filmed during Peacemaker and just stuck in there at the end. But those were my favorite characters. Who are your favorite characters of James Gunn's Suicide Squad?
I mean, I liked a lot of them. Bloodsport was my favorite for sure. Idris Elba, always a winner whenever he's cast in anything. I feel like he makes the movie 10 times better. In any movie he's in. I really like Idris Elba as an actor. So that was great. I also really liked Polka Dot Man. I thought he was funny. He had a great storyline throughout it too. The running joke with his mom in it as well was hilarious. I noticed actually that something in that scene where he first tells everyone about like his backstory. Where his mother's face gets superimposed onto everyone in it. So it's Sebastian, yeah, the Ratcatcher 2's main rat. He actually gets his face superimposed with Polka Dot Man's mother as well. I noticed that in my third rewatch. So I was just looking and I was like, wait a second, I could see the glasses on the hair on him. And so that was kind of funny. So that was great. I also really liked, I liked Ratcatcher too. I thought she was great. The relationship between her and Bloodsport throughout this was great as well. Really made the movie a lot more emotional, which was great. And then Harley Quinn throughout the movie. I'm glad that was, like that's a casting that was kept in this movie, because she was really funny in this movie. One of my favorite lines from her in that is the very beginning when they're getting lifted off to first go to the mission, the actual suicide mission. She's talking to Javelin, and she says, "I love your accent," and he's like, "American women always love him." And then in a very distinct accent, she says, "Yeah, because we don't got none." And I was like, it's such a genius joke because it only works because of how it's said. But I think that just shows like Harley Quinn's kind of humor and and the comedy that she brings to it. But
she's the perfect Harley Quinn. She really is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I think. I think Gunn really got her to be the perfect Harley Quinn, because there's times like I watched Birds of Prey. That was actually one of the last movies I saw before COVID, kind of closed everything down. It was Birds of Prey and Onward were like my last 2 theater experiences before 2020 stopped everything. And I remember leaving like, see, and again, that's expectations. I went in thinking this movie's got a lot of great reviews. I like Harley Quinn. I like, some of these other characters. I'm excited to see Black Mask as a villain. I go in there and I left kind of disappointed because it really felt unnecessarily R, where there was like probably 3 moments that could have just been cut and you would have been like, oh, that's PG-13. So it just seems like they wanted to do an R-rated thing, I guess. I don't know. But it was kind of, and then she didn't get a chance to really be Harley. Like her costume in that movie is not anything like it is in this one. We need more black and red Harley wearing stuff than whatever she's been wearing in the DCEU before this movie. Like that wardrobe was great for her in this. It was classic Harley. It was, I feel like the writing for her was great in this. Like that scene when she kills the, the dictator, and she's like talking about red flags and what she's learned from being associating with Joker and dating Joker and all that kind of stuff. It worked out really well, and I appreciate that as well with James Gunn, because again, that's something that he's acknowledging in this universe that he didn't need to. Technically, I guess they're letting him do whatever he wanted. And I think he's mentioned a few times that they let him do whatever he wanted, but he kind of made those choices to kind of keep some of that stuff intact, which I appreciate, because it's, for fans of those movies and whatever, and anybody that goes and watches them in any sort of combination in the future, it'll feel consistent. It'll feel, okay, she did Suicide Squad, she went to Birds of Prey, and then after Birds of Prey, we see her in the Suicide Squad, and we get like this storyline of her kind of freeing herself from Joker, and that thread runs through it, and her kind of becoming her own person. Yeah.
I will say, I think that might have been something that Gunn kind of took from working in the MCU. One thing that I think the DCEU has been missing compared to the MCU has been, that sort of continuity. It feels like, and this could be inaccurate, but based off of an outside perspective, one of the things I've seen people complain about is that they're too quick to write things out when they're unpopular. Whereas, in the MCU, Thor: The Dark World was unpopular, but they still go through with it. They don't try and make it not canon or try and
they double down. They put it in the biggest movie of all time with Endgame.
Exactly. So that's what I think I appreciate that as well, because it shows that, it shows the value of keeping that continuity, even when things aren't bad or are bad, or seemingly not as good as they could be. Sometimes attaching them to that other movie makes them better because it provides further context, and that connection makes it more meaningful in the future. So I think that's probably something he took from working in the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing the MCU and even Star Wars right now is getting a lot of credit for, because Star Wars has been pulling in on the Disney Plus shows anyway. They've been pulling in comic book characters. They've been pulling in the animated series characters. They've been making references to the sequel trilogy that even a lot of people hate that trilogy. They're still not like, no, we're not overwriting anything. We're going to make it work with whatever we got. And we're going to bring in every single piece of Star Wars. And Marvel does the same thing. We're going to bring in it. Like Eternals gets a lot of crap. I don't think they're going to change their plans with it. It may not make a sequel to it, but these characters are still going to be around in the MCU. And I think the same thing with this. And at this point, when Gunn has done Guardians and he's going to be doing a lot more DC television work, just just let him control the DCEU, I guess. I don't know if he wants to. I don't know if he wants to. When he left Marvel and DC called him up, they said, you can have whatever property you want. He could have touched Batman if he wanted to. He could have done Superman. He could have done whatever. He opted to choose characters that he wanted to do. Suicide Squad because he really loved those comics growing up, and he wanted to touch some of these characters that are not as popular. They interest him more, is what he's been saying a lot in these. So, I don't want anybody to be like, let's force him in to do some Batman or anything. He's not going to be interested, I don't think. Even though Batman's his favorite DC character, he's, I don't think he's interested in that. He wants to kind of explore. And with these side characters like Peacemaker that don't have a lot of fans, you're able to kind of leave your mark the same way he did with Guardians, where, when Guardians is popular, then it's that team in Guardians of the Galaxy, the film, was the most recent team in 2008. Like, there was older Guardians that they could have chosen, but he chose these characters, I think, because some of them were not well known. And he's able to make Rocket his own. He's able to make Groot his own thing, And I think that's what drew him to this. He's able to, kind of do whatever he wants with Peacemaker. He's able to do whatever he wants with Bloodsport because these characters were not having fans line up like, these are my favorites. But they end up becoming people's favorites. Like I was talking about before on the Marvel show at times, like, I grew up and the only big superheroes to be fans of were Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. And now people can say Rocket Raccoon is their favorite superhero, and that's because of James Gunn and what he did with Guardians. And I'm sure there's now DC people that say my favorite character is Peacemaker or it's Bloodsport. And those are characters that nobody gave a crap about beforehand. All right, let's go into... just real quick before we get into the show, what was your thoughts about Peacemaker as a character as we left the Suicide Squad movie?
I didn't like him. Obviously, I will say, I know some people were like, oh, he's a totally awful person for what he was doing, but at the end of the day, I do feel his point a little bit. Like, he wants to keep the peace. The way he's trying to do it is misguided. So it doesn't make him a totally unsympathetic character. And also, if Amanda Waller was the one who told him to cover that up, he can't exactly disobey. Otherwise, she's going to, blow him up using an explosive device in his brain. So I get like why he did it, but I still did not like him, especially after he started I was a little bit less sad about the Rick Flag death compared to you. Like, he was still sad, obviously, but when he started trying to go for Ratcatcher 2, and she's like, just destroy the drive. Why would you have to kill me? And he's like, I'm thorough. And I was like, yeah, no, I hate this guy. I really don't like him now. I wasn't really sure what to think about it, going into it. And I will say the reason why I chose to watch the show is because, when I got off the plane, I went onto TikTok, and one of the first videos I saw was the intro song on TikTok. And I was just like, this looks funny and this looks great. Where do I watch this and what is it? And so I went straight from there to watching it, and yeah, that's kind of what I went into the show thinking. I was like, it's going to have a funny intro scene, and it's going to, it's going to feature a guy that I probably don't like that much, but I'm interested to see what happens with him.
Yeah, I was kind of in that same boat, like I said about earlier, and he, yeah, I mean, the Rick Flag thing was kind of like strike one, but when he was about to kill Ratcatcher, it was like, oh, strike two. But I love the way Gunn also just plays with the time in that movie and the graphics on the screen, like the title cards. Mm-hmm. Operation Harley. Yep. Well, first it says Operation Jotunheim, right? And then they're like, but one thing we got to do first. And then it goes the smoke making it Harley. Like it's that kind of creative stuff that he was doing with it. And, you know, all those characters dying in the beginning to kind of an upbeat song about people who die. Like it's pretty, you know, it's pretty James Gunn.
Yeah.
And, you know, Peacemaker, I was kind of like, all right, let's see what you got. But yeah, before I was able to watch it, everybody's talking about the opening credit scene. And I was like, yeah, this looks good. And then sat down to watch it and really enjoyed it. And, you know, it picks up 5 months after, you know, the building falls on him. And he survived.
5 months after not only the building falls on him and he gets shot in the throat. So
yes.
somehow he survives and recovers in 5 months from that.
Yeah, he's just built well, I guess. I don't know.
I guess he's built different. That's
But, you know, he returns home, and I liked seeing his home, you know, it being just a regular trailer in a trailer park, and all of the America stuff that he has littered around the yard. And then we're actually introduced to some new characters. We get introduced to Leota Adebayo. We get introduced to Clemson Mern. And then, of course, we already know Amelia Harcourt and John Economos from the Suicide Squad, which I thought was great that he was able to bring those characters in to kind of continue another piece of connectivity to the Suicide Squad movie. And this is where they learn that, you know, Project Butterfly. And it is funny that both of these, you know, Project Starfish and Project Butterfly are both very similar, right? With them taking over the host, but they're done very differently. Like Starro, of course, is controlling you from the outside, and you lose all of your personality. The butterflies actually retain all of the information from the host, and in a sense, some of that personality still transfers, but nobody knows that something's wrong with you. Like, and I think that's scarier, right? Like anybody could have been a butterfly. And James Gunn before the show said that the theme song, while funny the first few times, can take on different meanings when you see more of the show. And what I took from that is, you know, there's a lot of characters that end up getting butterflied, and the dance moves are very emotionless, butterfly-esque, you know. And when you see the three cops now, and you get to see them, like, once after Sophie gets taken over in like episode 6, when you watch the episode 7 one, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, she's gone. You know, that's somebody else controlling her right now. Like, that's kind of what I was reading from it. Of, you know, the first few times I watched this, I'm thinking, oh, okay, the cops are getting into it. But now it's like, okay, maybe they're the butterflies. Maybe that's Goff inside of her during this theme song, you know, because she's emotionless. And when I see the emotionless from Chris, I read it more as he's broken on the inside. You know, Gunn talks about that moment at the piano in 6 or 7, whatever episode that
6,
is.
Yep.
That's the first time you actually see the real Chris. You know, he's actually letting himself be vulnerable here. He's not putting up his defenses. And that's what I kind of see the theme song as being. His dance moves are the shield that he's trying to portray himself as being one way, but his face is portraying himself as a different way. His expressionlessness is his sadness that's inside after killing his brother and growing up with a really bad dad and killing Rick Flag and all that stuff that's bothered him is why he's emotionless in that theme song. And again, I could be reading way too much into it, but you know, there's definitely some meaning in some of this stuff. You can kind of read the same thing into Harcourt of, you know, down inside what she's dealing with, right? She presents herself one way, but she's actually another way. And you can kind of make those relations. Mern is just another butterfly. So you can kind of throw that in there.
And with the episode 8 kind of monologue, yeah, I guess, from Economos, same kind of thing, you know. I thought that was one of my favorite scenes actually from that episode, showing kind of the vulnerability and also, you know, cutting back to Peacemaker's face, hearing it as well. Like he's growing as a person, where he's like, my words are having like a significant effect on these people that I want to be friends. You know, like he starts to realize that in, I think it's episode 2, when he's reflecting on all of these events.
When he's doing his facial exercises, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So like he starts to realize that then, but he doesn't really change anything. But then episode 8 rolls around, and he's like, "Wow, he's a different person. I feel like he becomes a different person throughout."
And what episode does he call Economos John? Is that 5 when they kill the gorilla?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's after he kills the gorilla. Yep.
So even then, so it goes like 2. Episode 2, he recognizes he's hurting Economos.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 5, he actually calls him John, right?
Yep.
Episode 8, he hears that monologue from John that says about, he didn't think anybody would notice, and he does it to look younger, and all this got really well portrayed by Steve Agee, and also the fact that Gunn takes something that was a joke for the first like 7 episodes and makes it into this hauntingly beautiful speech of, I'm sure everybody does this kind of thing. People might wear toupees or do a comb over because they think people can't notice, but it might be very noticeable. But they might even think they're invisible. I think that's what it says about John too, is that he didn't think anybody would notice. I don't think he thought like anybody would notice because it's very well done, but I think it's just, he didn't think he was being seen, right? Like he didn't feel seen by anybody. So what would it matter if he dies, right? Like nobody's paying attention to me. And I think people can kind of relate to that type of thing at times too.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was, there were a lot of emotional moments throughout this show, but I think that one was one of the most relatable ones, at least to me, and to a bunch of other people, I'm sure. So I always liked Steve Agee as an actor. He had like a small part in one of my favorite TV shows, New Girl. He plays this guy named Outside Dave. He's fantastically funny in the few episodes he's in, but I loved seeing him take on more of a main character role, in this.
And did you know that John Economos is an actual DC character? This is something I did not know.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he is created in 1987 in Suicide Squad #1 from when they did another Suicide Squad run. And he is the warden of Belle Reve Penitentiary, where we kind of see him end up here at the end of the show. So it's kind of like maybe that was his origin story. Because before he's just a normal like guy on the inside with Waller in the Suicide Squad. And that's another thing I like about Suicide Squad is, when they're placing their bets on who's going to die and everything. And the way that they're like, have these two worked together before? Like all that kind of stuff that, you would obviously want to know if you were, it's kind of like placing bets on sporting events, like,
yeah.
Oh, well, has, Reynoso ever hooked up with this player before? Have they played together? Have they, have kind of doing the same thing with the DC characters, which was funny. But yeah, I did not know he was an actual like character. I thought it was something Gunn created, but again, he's taken an obscure character. Obscure for me anyway. I didn't know much about Belle Reve Penitentiary, so that might be my problem. But yeah, just how I'm not sure if Harcourt is. I could check that, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it's weird seeing all of these characters, and not even the most hardcore comic fans aren't going to be like, oh yeah, I know this character really well. Like I know everything about them. It feels like there's something new for every type of comic book movie fan to enjoy in these sort of shows and movies, and introducing brand new characters as well. As far as I know, Adebayo is a completely original character that was created for the show. I'm not sure if that's entirely correct. That's what I remember reading, but it seems like it's an interesting way to go about this. Expanding this universe into something bigger, which I think DC fans, at least most, except for maybe a specific subset of them that we won't mention by name, perhaps, can appreciate in all of that.
Yeah, I believe Adebayo is original character because people were kind of speculating she was going to be Waller's daughter, but it seemed like it was something that not everybody knew. So I do think it is a brand new character. Amelia Harcourt is a character from the comics. 2016 was her first appearance. So there you go.
Yeah.
An NSA agent working with Argus. Which is the government agency that sets up Suicide Squad. So yeah, that's interesting. Now, one thing I want to talk about too is at the end, you know, when we talk about at the end of the show and he's killed his father, and I do like the move to make it White Dragon instead of, so in the comics his dad is a Nazi who worked for the internment camps and stuff, and you know, at this rate he would be way too old. So I do like that change to, okay, well, what's the equivalent of a Nazi right now? Well, it's these like neo-Nazis who are white supremacists, right? So that works, that checks out. And then White Dragon is a DC character, but not something that is used a lot. So it's just kind of like Marvel does this all the time too, kind of fusing two characters into one for a villain. Like Ego. Ego is not actually Peter's father in Guardians of the Galaxy comics and Marvel comics, but you know, again, it's like taking different things and meshing it into one. So I like that. But one thing that's kind of that I've learned as I researched this is that after he so he believes that the ghosts of the people he has killed in the comics or killed in his vicinity are collected inside of his helmet, and they offer him advice and commentary. I think that's interesting. And that also, he believes his father's spirit haunts him continually and criticizes his every move, even as he tries to live down his past. I think that sets up season 2 very well. So like the fact that Augie is still with him, not just in the scene where he finds the helmet, but at the end on the porch, makes me think that his dad is sticking with them, and that Gunn is taking this kind of element from the comics of being haunted. Just the way he was kind of, and that's interesting too, he's kind of haunted by Rick Flag throughout this show before his dad dies, where he keeps hearing the Peacemaker, what a joke, right? He keeps thinking about it. And then now his dad is going to stick with him. And it kind of takes that element without it being like him thinking his helmet stores it. It's more of just a mental thing. And I think that sets up some very interesting stuff for season 2.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting ways they can take this into season 2. You know, they could come up with something to do with Judo Master, right? Because he was around.
Wasted. He was wasted.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was supposed to die, I think, in episode 4. And that there was a late addition for him to film those other scenes, which makes sense because he's by himself, like during the Cheeto scene at the gas station.
I will say that was funny though. That was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, but other than that, like they could have left him dead. So I think he has plans for Judo Master.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be something in season 2. You know, he's going to try and do something to keep fulfilling the Butterflies mission or something like that. I could see that happening. And you know, we could also take it in the direction of sort of the Amanda Waller route, right? You know, Adebayo goes on TV, reveals everything that's been done with this. Like, I wonder if it could set up like more of these unknown characters to be featured in season 2 of Peacemaker. You know, make some cameos or something like that. But I think you're probably right that given that the last scene we see in the show, it is Peacemaker, Goff feeding on the last of the Amaru fluid, and then his dad. I think that's probably the direction we'll take it in. But you know, we also haven't talked about one character that I wanted to mention real quick, which is Eagly.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think he's one of the breakout stars from this show.
Oh, definitely.
He it especially like in that last episode, I loved the scene where Chris is like, all right, go drop the helmet on top of the barn. And then Harcourt's like, there's no way Eagly knows what you're saying.
Do you know why that's so relatable? Do you know why that's so
what?
relatable? Is because my wife and I talking to our dogs, where we'll be like, go do this thing, and the other one will be like, they don't understand what you're saying, and then they go, and you think they're going to do the thing you told them to, and you're like, yeah, and then they don't, and you're like, oh no. But now imagine the stakes of that times 10 while you're trying to feed an alien cow, and you're like,
exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, but I bring up Eagly because I was talking to my dad, and he wanted me to mention this on this. So, this show, he really liked it. He was looking for some new shows to watch, and Eagly was his favorite character by far, and that's because he had a pet bird that he had for since like she was a week old. Her name was Jasmine. She unfortunately passed away in December, and he had been really sad about that. But all of the scenes with Eagly and Peacemaker, when Eagly hugs him in episodes 1 and 7, he texted me and he was like, that's exactly what Jasmine used to do, like snuggling up to me. So it just shows how powerful like those emotional moments can be, because, James Gunn is such an amazing director on this, right? Like, and showing how much power those emotional moments can have and how much it means to some people. So, James Gunn, I'm not sure if you're going to listen to this, but if you do, my dad would definitely like to thank you for adding in those sorts of moments.
Yeah, that is, when you mentioned that your dad cried at that scene and I said, me too, I was like, oh crap, yeah, it definitely means more for your dad. And I was like, hopefully it didn't come across wrong when I was like, oh, me too. Like, no, I mean, he'd gone through so much more with his bird, but anytime I think of an animal like that, I always equate it to my dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And, and Gunn is such a huge animal lover too, that I think we see that with Rocket, and I mean, Groot's a tree, right? But we get Sebastian, right? And you get Eagly, and you get Myrn as a butterfly who gets squashed, and that was a touching scene, as he kind of holds Harcourt's finger, in her hand, and just that kind of thing. And I even feel sorry for Goff here at the end when it's the last of the ambered fluid, and Gunn said that in the thing, it's the last of it. So, I mean, he can always backtrack on that, and they could still use maybe they had tons of bottles of it at the cow facility, or maybe this is months later when it definitely is months later because Harcourt's walking, right?
Yeah,
so, I mean,
if you get shot with a shotgun shell, like in the back, you're not walking after a few days.
Yes. Yeah. So, this is months later. It's the last of the fluid. And it's Goff's last meal, but just the fact that Goff was coming and knocking on the door, like, "Hey, I'm hungry. Like, let's hang out," and it answered my question I had of, was Goff just messing with Peacemaker? Because at the end of episode 4, which I think is one of my favorites of the show, when you get that montage and we kind of see his brother die, we're not really sure how. We have House of Pain playing, and we have the Peacemaker, What a Joke again with Rick Flag, and you get all this kind of stuff that's very heartfelt and stuff like that, and he gets Goff high, and Eagly and Goff go over to check on him, and Goff is also, when they're asking the yes or no questions, puts the peace sign, and I'm like, are they? But then when the thing breaks, she says, "Where are those morons at?" So you're like, okay, maybe she doesn't like them, but I think there was some sort of compassion she felt for him, for being nice to him. Like, he could have just killed Goff, but he wanted he didn't trust everybody in his group because of the secrets they were holding from him, and he I guess we don't even know if he knew Myrn was a butterfly, right? Myrn dies,
right? Yeah, I don't
separately from him, and
Does he find out in episode 6?
I don't think so. When they're going to the facility, Myrn says something about the cow. He's like, how do you know that? And they're just kind of like, they kind of brush it off. Like,
that's right.
So I don't even know if he knows Myrn was maybe he's been called up after that, but it's kind of a, he wasn't told all of this stuff. So he had rights to be kind of suspicious and keep Goff. And it really feels weird too. I feel sorry for Sophie because she was one of my favorites. And her last act is trying to arrest Chris because of and letting Augie out due to the wrong fingerprint thing. And she's thinking, here's the thing, her whole experience in this and then trying to get Chris is so small compared to what the actual scope is. And she ends up dying trying to fulfill something that's meaningless. That is ultimately meaningless to the butterfly situation. She never knows anything about the butterflies. She won't ever learn that, but then Goff takes her over. And it's one of those moments where you look at it and say, like, dang, like that sucks. And I feel sorry for her partner, who I'm blanking on the name right now.
Fitzgibbon.
Yes, Fitzgibbon. Because, he sees her act differently. He's going to start questioning her and start trying to figure stuff out. But guess what? All the butterflies come in and take over the whole jail and the police force. And now I guess Evergreen doesn't have any sort of police force. So they're going to have to figure that out. But it's one of those things where ultimately those characters end up meaningless in the sense of their life. Their life died. Their lives ended doing something futile to stop something that didn't matter, and they get taken over by these creatures, and they're just husks of themselves at that point.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Like, the whole butterfly situation, at first, like, it seems very black and white. Like the way the situation is introduced, it's like butterflies are bad. That's it. We need to take them out. And then I love how the story layers on in complexity. Whereas, like, I liked a lot of the MCU shows, right? That came out last year. But I feel like the villains never got like that added layer of complexity to them when all was said and done. Either because they were introduced too late in the story, or just bad writing, I guess, for better or for worse. But
introduced in episode 5 of 6 or whatever. Most of the time.
Exactly. And so I really enjoyed how they added that complexity to it. All coming in this last episode, which, probably made a lot of people mad, that monologue. I'm not going to lie. It definitely made a few groups of people mad, but if they were watching through this entire thing through episode 8 already, I don't think many of the people that would have been made mad by that comment were left watching. So, but the point about Peacemaker asking afterwards, like, did I make the right decision with this to save? Did I actually save the Earth, or did I doom it? And I think that's really interesting, and kind of an interesting point about just humanity in general. Like, is it better to try and control our own destiny, or is it better to do whatever it takes to survive? And it kind of comes down to, like, well, at least if like it is your fault at the end of the day, you had the freedom of choice to do it, and you weren't like you were actually able to live. But I think Gunn had something to say about it on Twitter. I can't remember exactly what he said about that, but he kind of is like, yeah, I mean, he's right to kind of question it, because for all we know, yeah, he could have doomed the Earth there. It could have been, but he also might have saved it from being like free and having free will and actually being able to live their lives. So it's interesting. It's an interesting point where, again, like Peacemaker at the end of Suicide Squad, you can see the point of who's supposed to be not sympathetic at that point. And you start to soften to that goal a little bit. And you're like, well, there's a bit of a point there, but then it turns very quickly. So I think that's a really nice moment, really good storytelling as well.
Yeah, it's tough when she's explaining all that. You're like, well, maybe he shouldn't, maybe he should let the cow go, you know? But also, what type of life is it for humans if they're just infected by butterflies?
Right.
You know, because the butterflies are going to mate, then they're going to want to spread their, it's for the safety of their species, really, that they escaped their home, landed here because it's the only other planet that was habitable for them, and then realized, well, we're on the same path here, but so let's take over more people to try to right the wrongs here and take over powerful people and all that kind of stuff. But then everybody's a butterfly at one point, right? So then what's the actual life that humans are having? So it's the while you might be saving Earth, maybe you're not saving humans, and maybe humans can still take those paths without the butterflies, you know, and then everybody has a chance to live. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of the questions where you're like, man, did he do the right thing? Who knows, right? But it's exciting to kind of think about the prospect of that. And I wonder how long they can last without food, and, you know, how long is Goff dying in a few days from now? You know, I wonder about that.
I think Gunn commented about that on Twitter, saying that Goff like you said, it's the last of the amber fluid. So Goff is like on the last few weeks of its life. That's basically what he said. So, you know, it's meant to be kind of like that recognition of defeat, kind of, because I'm not sure about you, but for a moment in that last scene when he's getting the amber fluid, I was like, I don't know, is Goff going to try and take over Peacemaker here? Like, is that? And is that?
Oh
how
no,
they're
I knew
gonna
at
set
that
up
point.
scene?
I knew at that point. Yeah.
I had like a slight feeling, same like with the scene where Hardcore touches her finger to Mern's butterfly, right?
Yeah.
I can't pronounce that that name, and I don't remember it. I remember it's
neither.
very complex. So, but
It's not meant for our ears, isn't that what they
exactly,
said or
exactly, right. So I think it's, I think it there was like that kind of dread moment where you were like, are they going to try and survive by taking over right here? Because, you know, there's characters that were made to feel sort of sympathetic for, like in Detective Son and Fitzgibbon, right? We're supposed to be a little sympathetic towards them, and we just see them getting taken over by butterflies anyway. So it makes you wonder, like in those moments, like, I don't know, could it happen? It's almost like the beginning of Suicide Squad, how that worked out, where you felt like everyone was kind of in danger.
Yeah, I mean, she would still be alive if she did not try to arrest Chris. That's the only reason they try to escape with Goff, right? Like, and the reason she's doing that is because it's the right thing to do. She's doing something that's right because Augie's an asshole to her. He's racist to her, right? And she still tries to get him out of jail because he's innocent of the crime he's convicted of, not innocent overall. But and it sucks, and that's where I think we relate to them the most. Is like, okay, she's trying to do the right thing here, but also we don't want her to arrest Chris because we know his dad's an asshole, and the reason we want him to survive is because he's got to take down the butterflies, right? And we don't. So then we're kind of like rooting for her at one point because Augie's calling her racist stuff, but then we're not rooting for her to figure out stuff with Chris. But then the butterfly flies into her. Then we're really like, oh, I don't want her anymore. And then she kind of becomes the face of the opposition. But then at the end, she makes her speech, and you're like, well, maybe she's not the opposition, right? So it's like this whole tug of war, right? Of like what we're supposed to feel. And I think that's what's interesting about what Gunn did here. And apparently when he auditioned Annie Chang, one of her audition scenes was one of the monologues or something at the end here where she had to be goth and interview as song as well. And, he said some people did song really well. Some people did goth really well, but nobody did both of them as well as she did. And it sucks though, because, her character is dead, so she can't even come back. So we have to kind of look for her to be in other shows, other stuff, because she was really good. I really liked her.
Yeah, I think that she did a fantastic job. Really, really well acted out, and just shows that Gunn creates complex characters in literally anything. There is no truly good character. There is no truly bad character in most of these. Like there's, I guess like the dictator in the Suicide Squad is just an objectively bad character, but most of the major characters have texture to them. That's I guess the point to get across. But speaking of characters, there's one character that we haven't talked about as well that was also a breakout star of this.
Vigilante.
And, yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course. He. I know he has a history in the comics because I saw a few videos examining his history. But I think he's just presented brilliantly in this. Freddie Stroma does a great job presenting him as like this weird character. He's I think that's encapsulated best in episode 7 where they're at the vet clinic, and he is like, they saw our faces and they could call the cops, so we have to kill them. And then they're like, no, let's just tie them up. And then he's like, all right, but don't use duct tape because it'll hurt when they take it off. And
I love Economos here. You don't mind killing them, but you're worried about their skin being hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a wonderful representation of, Vigilante just being this crazy sort of guy that just, he has a kind of moral code, but it's just a weird one that functions outside of any normal one. And I really enjoyed watching him throughout this. I thought he was hilarious. And, also the scene in the prison with where he is talking with Augie is, all the other people in there that are just all the other white supremacists. That's the word. That's the right way to do it. Where he's just like, what is everyone's favorite contribution that African Americans have made to society? And
I'll start rock and roll, right?
Yeah. And so it's
and he
it's
says
just
all these
hilarious.
names of the bands that all the southern heavy metal or heavy rock bands that that those people really love.
Yep.
Like
yeah.
Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, it was just hilarious. Like and I really enjoyed that scene. I thought it was just great. It was great writing, and also just showed like some great character for both Vigilante, like how much he cares about Chris, even if that friendship isn't always reciprocated. He cares about him a lot, and also showing that Augie is a little bit smarter than he might seem.
Yeah, Vigilante was probably my favorite. I can't imagine him played by anybody else. I'm so glad they recast it. I don't know what sort of issues that they had with the previous actor. They had some sort of creative differences, right? I'm not sure what they are. They've had to rewrite some stuff, I think, because the guy who was going to play him was so much older than Freddie Stroma. And Stroma, is now playing Adrian Chase's younger, and he's a busboy. Was that not? I guess that wasn't going to be his role then. Like, I don't know what, I don't know where they would have fit him in originally if he was like a older person that's close to Cena's age. Like, I don't know, unless if he was just going to be still a busboy, but just an older one that never really went anywhere with his life, right? I guess that could have been it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely interesting when we talk about talking about that because it was they had filmed everything in order, I think, until they recast it, and then they recast it when they filmed all of Stroma's stuff. They were in the middle of 6, 7, and 8, so they filmed 5 episodes with the other guy before whatever differences came about. So it's either Gunn didn't think he was doing it right, or the actor wanted to be more serious than comedic, I would think. I don't know. I mean, it could have been anything, but at a certain point it wasn't working, and they brought Freddie Stroma in, who was just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, he just nailed it, and it was just funny. And also the color scene, questioning Goff with the yes or no questions.
Yeah.
What is your favorite color? And then just going
yes or no
all the
questions.
Colors. Yeah. Okay. Is your favorite color teal? Like that sort of stuff. And it's just, it's really funny. And I think also, like, Peacemaker, he doesn't always show it, but he obviously cares for Vigilante at the same time.
Yes. But it's not his second best friend.
Right. Yeah. It's
Adebayo is.
Yeah. We don't know.
Eagly and then Adebayo.
Yep. We don't know where Vigilante falls on there.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Probably third.
Yeah. Maybe. Who knows?
I think he sees him as a brother, right?
Yeah,
I don't think
exactly. That's what I was going to get to right there. Yeah. He's missed that kind of brother throughout his entire life. And, all of the best memories of his childhood were with him. And that's where he gets like all of his information about music and stuff like that. I think that's what makes their relationship so special. And it makes sense as well, because, brothers, they care about each other, but they're also, they also like mock each other, make fun of each other and stuff like that. So it feels like a real relationship that's been built up over time, right? It doesn't feel like a forced one, I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think, and then, just the fact that Chris has to live with that killing his actual brother, right? By accident, due to really his dad's fault for making them play outside and fight, do like this, I don't know, Michael Vick style without dogs type of fighting with kids. I don't know what they were trying to do. But
it seemed like he was trying to make some money off of his white supremacist friends.
So what did he do then? Yeah. Did he just punch him so hard it gave him a seizure, or like?
I think that's what it is. I think it was like some brain trauma that occurred. I mean, like, I'm not a doctor or anything, so I can't like say like.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, unfortunately not. No, but I think that's what it is. I think it's just like he punched him so hard. To kind of like live up to expectations, and it just hit wrong. So yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I want to talk about episode 2 real quick too, because I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the dynamic between the family, the husband and wife that Peacemaker is going to ruin their lives here. He's going to end up stealing this guy's girl and have a 3-way with Vigilante and her. And Vigilante, if the marijuana wasn't legal, he was going to kill them. He says, a few years ago, I'd kill you for that. Like, he is very strict by the book type of law abiding citizen, except for when he takes out people with his murder. But just thought that was a really fun dynamic between them.
Yeah, I thought they were a pretty funny pair, and they also come back a little bit later. Was it episode 4 or 5? They come back in one of those 2 episodes.
I think it's 4, because that's when they're releasing Augie, right?
5
no, so it's 5. It's 5. Yeah.
I think that's that's funny, because the dynamic it shows it's still continuing throughout that. The guy immediately points to Chris, and then the wife's like, "No, it's not him." And then she's like, "Can I take that picture though?" And it's like, and it's just it's kind of funny,
All just over a love of Cinderella, wasn't that what it was? The band,
like
Cinderella.
the band, yeah.
Amazing. All right, favorite episode title. What do you got here?
Ooh.
They're all very pun filled here.
They all are. As a big fan of the Jungle Cruise and Disney, I'm a big fan of puns. So I think my favorite one though is "Stop Dragging My Heart Around." I really like that one because it really connects to the episode.
Mhm.
It's probably one of the most emotional episodes, I would say.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that and I don't know. I feel like dragon is the best fit for that. Like it sounds the most like the word it's trying to imitate.
Yeah, I really like Mern After Reading.
That's a good one too.
I really like the name of that. Let's see. What that episode is the one where they're going to when the white dragon is getting ready to come after him, and it ends with that kind of scene with all the races coming out.
Yep.
That was a good scene too. I like we said in our chat, I'm pretty sure that they had to do the 2-eared hoods for that because I think they could have gotten in trouble with the other way.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear. Like if you know anything about history, it's pretty clear what they're supposed to represent.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, it's but I think you're right on that. They probably had to change it a little bit.
Another thing that they had to change, we've seen now that they've had, I don't know what to call them, like stand-ins for Cyborg and Batman that had to end up getting cut out of that Justice League cameo, which we haven't talked about yet. Gunn has said in an interview there was some sort of, he couldn't use them. He couldn't say why, really. Wasn't sure if he could say why, but it might be for future things. I'm sure the Cyborg one is just touchy because Ray Fisher, who was Cyborg, has come out and said things about the uppers of DC, the uppers of WB, and said that he would not work with them as long as Hamada is still in the position. So you could either put a stand in there and say, well, guess what? You weren't that. But I think he would also, it might cause some issues with Ray Fisher and Ray Fisher's fans of, well, it makes it seem like you're saying he consented to this. Like it's supposed to be his version of Cyborg. But then if you leave him out, people are like, well, why'd you leave out Cyborg? A very tricky situation there that I think it was best to just probably leave him out. Batman left out because who knows? I mean, if they didn't need Ben Affleck there. Ben Affleck is still the Batman until Flash, when it's going to get changed to Michael Keaton through the Flashpoint event. So at this point, it would still be Ben Affleck's Batman, and you have the stand-in wearing his outfit. But for whatever reason, maybe because this episode's coming out so close to the Batman, they didn't want that in there, right? I mean, because that Batman with Robert Pattinson is unrelated to all of this. So yep. I think it was probably smart to leave him out too, of confusing people.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it also makes sense that not all of the Justice League shows up for this, because I don't know much about the Justice League in the comics, right? But I have a feeling that they don't always respond to every single thing as a whole team, right? Sometimes they send out like smaller groups of it. Right. And
especially if you're talking about the cartoon, like the cartoon, they had Justice League and then they had Justice League Unlimited, which had like every DC character in it. And yeah, there'd be some episodes where you're like, okay, we're only getting these 4 or we're only getting these 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And like if you think about the MCU as well, like they don't have the Avengers team up for every single movie. Like there's still a team, but sometimes you just get like Captain America and Black Widow teaming up. Or, like Hulk and Thor. But it makes sense that the entire team isn't going to be available right at that point in time. And
because they all got their own things going on too. They're not just sitting around. Like
exactly. Like, they've got stuff to do. Batman's in Gotham, Cyborg, I don't know Cyborg's origin at all. So, but I'm sure he's got stuff to do.
Yeah, I don't know where he's based out of.
Yeah, and then I think it makes sense
Flash
to
is
have
Central
more.
City.
Yeah, I
Wonder
think it makes
Woman's-
sense to have some of them there and some of them missing. I think it makes it feel like it's more of like an emergency response.
Yeah.
Right. It makes it feel less planned. So that's my take on it, at least.
Yeah, I am trying to find where Cyborg's based out of because I don't think he really has like his own run usually where he's based out of anywhere. Like he's usually with either the Titans or the Justice League. Like I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. But Flash is usually Central City. Wonder Woman, I guess you could say Themyscira, but I think she usually hangs out elsewhere. And then you have Aquaman sitting he's now King of Atlantis in this timeline. He's wearing his new uniform from the end of the Aquaman movie. So
I guess in the stories he's based, or in the comics, he's based out of Detroit, Michigan. So
oh really?
Yeah, that's what it says. In story information on Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, place of origin.
Yeah, Detroit,
Yeah.
Michigan. So I don't know he probably had something to do there. Who knows what it is?
In these films though, I think he's from Gotham because I think he played for a Gotham football team in the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, which is a good. Okay, if anybody wants to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, I talked about this on one of these episodes. It's a good movie. It's 4 hours long, and the last like 30 minutes, you can absolutely skip. Once you get to where they're looking and teasing stuff in the future for the nightmare sequences, you can just completely close it out because it's never going to be completed and it's just worthless setup. And you're like, the movie's already gone on too long at that point. So yeah, I definitely recommend if anybody wants to watch that, you can just kind of skip that part because it's not actually building to anything right now, unless they change their mind, I guess. But yeah. So let's talk about Justice League cameo. So we get them. We get Aquaman addressing the rumor that's been built up over 7 episodes that he sleeps with fish, makes romance to fish. A lot of people upset about this.
A very specific subset of people. Maybe the
yes.
same subset of people that were upset by many other things in this show.
Maybe. I think there are some that are just big Zack Snyder fans that did not appreciate this, but they liked when Joker asked Batman for a reach around in the Zack Snyder cut. So, I mean, it's confusing.
Yeah.
But, I really enjoyed seeing these here. For, again, people that don't know why we just had Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's not canon. You can easily just say it's canon and then cut out the last. Okay, so in my head canon, it's more canon than the Joss Whedon one, and I just cut out that last 30 minutes of the nightmare stuff where I can say, that was a good ending. There you go. And then, you don't have to worry about any future build up there, and it's better than the 2017, so you're like, okay, cool. That's Justice League. But when we're talking about like theatrical or anything like that, this is the first appearance of the Justice League since the 2017 Justice League film in the DCEU, which is insane because that's almost 5 years at this rate. And while it wasn't a hit, there's a lot of reasons why it wasn't a hit. Okay, one, they end up having Joss Whedon come aboard. He doesn't do a great job with it like he did with Avengers. He upsets the cast. You get DC saying it has to be less than 2 hours so they can play more showings. When that so they can make more money, which is going to be absolutely ripped apart by Endgame being almost 3 hours long and making the most money. So it ended up being futile at that rate. And, this is the first appearance of him. And it was great to see them again. It was great that they actually got Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller to do this little banter exchange, which yes, is banter. It is not confirmation that Aquaman sleeps with fish. For all the people that are taking this way too literally, James Gunn even said that Peacemaker makes all this stuff up. And then people say, well, then he shouldn't have to explain it. Exactly. He shouldn't have to explain it, but people are taking it too literally.
It's meant to give the Justice League more texture as a team. Like, you know, they're not supposed to be serious all the time. Like, they're friends. Like, some of them, I would assume, at least, like they're at least friendly.
Especially Flash and Aquaman are not like Aquaman makes some very I just watched this movie. Makes some very dumb jokes in his movie. Okay, this is not out of character for either of these two.
Yeah, so it just makes sense, like that they're joking around a little bit, and it also I love it because it gives like texture to the world, right? Like it's not just like some random thing that Peacemaker saw from like one person. It's like an actual rumor that's been going around. And so like
it's something he saw on Facebook or something.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those old like boomer Facebook memes or something like that. That's what it is with like it's like a Minion meme or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those.
It's a Minion in a bathtub or something.
Yep. Aquaman at the aquarium be like but it's just funny, and like I think it gives some great texture to the story, and just makes the world feel complete. Like it's those little kind of details that people appreciate that give it those connections. And yeah, I thought it was hilarious, but I get, yeah, I don't get why people were so upset with it. Like I guess I get that you want darker, grittier movies, right?
It's also that people take this stuff way too seriously.
Exactly.
It's a joke. Like we can joke in these things. It's not that serious. It's comic books. It's superheroes.
Yeah. If you had an entirely dark and gritty storyline, like that, it's going to isolate like normal audiences from ever getting into it. You've got to have some humor in it. The humor makes things seem inherently more human. That's what it is. Like it makes the Justice League, like one of which who's participating in this exchange, who is the king of Atlantis, you know, feel more human, and feel more like a real person, you know. Like I think it's great for that.
I just love the thought that the king of Atlantis has to deal with this rumor.
Yeah, like he's just scrolling through. He's just scrolling through Twitter, like, oh, the rumor's popping up again.
Damn, I gotta crush this time.
Yeah.
People probably making memes of him with like flounder or something. That's what I imagine he see. Yeah, Chris saw on scrolling. He was like, oh. But yeah, a great moment to just kind of, you know, and Jason Momoa laughed. He thought it was funny. Ezra Miller wanted to do it because he's a big James Gunn fan. Like, these people are not just, everybody seems to think whoever's just worked with Zack Snyder has just got his back 100% and only wants to do Zack Snyder stuff. It's not true. They have different tastes as well. They're going to want to do their own things. And, you know, Momoa is definitely a guy I could see being like, that's great. Let's do it. You know, like, he just has that personality. And and just, hey, be happy we saw them. I'm glad this actually said like where this team was, you know, like they mentioned them earlier, right? Where they're like, can't you get like the Justice League or somebody else here to like take care of this thing? Like, it's just us, you know? And a Waller's like brushes it off or says they won't get there, right? So, something like that. And then they do show up late, and I at least it, you know, everybody saw like Iron Man 3 and said, well, where was the rest of the Avengers? You know, and then they watched Dark World and they're like, where were the rest of the Avengers? This answered that question of, okay, they were just a little late, right? Yeah. Justice League got there just a little late because they took care of it so fast.
Yeah, I mean, it also shows the longer trend in this of just mocking superhero movie type trends or like comic book hero what they're like, like the monologue with Batman or the conversation with the neighbor about Batman. Like, do you know why I don't have supervillains? Because I actually kill them when they deserve to be killed.
Right.
And I don't let an insane clown break out of prison and run around and murder more people and then put him back in prison for him to do it again. I thought that was kind of funny. And, he has kind of a point. He has a little bit of a point. If like, the Joker breaks out of prison for the 80th time and goes on a killing spree, then you're telling me that,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you're telling me that, come on, you're not thinking that maybe prison isn't working at that point. Like maybe
not rehabilitating him, you mean?
Yeah, it's not working. So I think he's got a little bit of a point, but along with cameos, this show made a ton of other connections for the DCEU to take in with it. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, and how many times they reference Suicide Squad even, right? Like when Economos sees the cow. Oh, I'm not dealing with another kaiju.
Yeah.
Like I'm out of here. And there are numerous references to Rick Flag, and it really shows that this takes place in the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the connective tissue James Gunn put in here. And again, he's respecting the characters. He's respecting the fans. He knew the fans would probably want to see the Justice League. He writes that in there and says, let's see if we can get them, right? Because he knew the fans would want to see that because they haven't for 5 years, right? So it's that kind of thing that helps, I think, as well. And so we mentioned earlier, Peacemaker is a Charlton Comics character. Do you know who else are Charlton Comics characters?
I did look it up last night, or earlier today. Blue Beetle, I believe, is one name that I saw that was on there, and I know that's coming up in a future DC project.
Yes, it was going to be an HBO Max original film, but they've now shifted that to be a theatrical film for 2023.
Okay,
which is a big deal because he's actually so the second Blue Beetle, I believe he's the second one. Jaime Reyes is like the first Latino representation that we can really get in these movies. I don't think Marvel's had that yet. So it's a big deal to put them in a theatrical release instead of just shoving it to an HBO Max. So yes, Blue Beetle is our Charlton Comics character. So is Judo Master.
Oh, okay. I did not know about that one.
Yes, Judo Master Rip Jagger, the original Judo Master. There's been a few of them. Is a Charlton Comics character, and so is Amun-Ra, one of the Egyptian gods. Who is so it's a little confusing because Amun-Ra was in Blue Beetle as well, but he's also been in Dr. Fate, but Dr. Fate was a DC character, so I mean obviously there's probably numerous people that have done Amun-Ra. Captain Atom is Atom being ATOM is another Charlton Comics character.
Is that like Ant-Man? It feels like it's like that guy has to be like Ant-Man.
I don't know if Captain Atom is. I know there is a character that is what's his power say here? Oh, he's based out of Cape Canaveral, though, Florida.
Okay.
That's interesting. And he's created by Steve Ditko, actually.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it doesn't say. Where's his powers at? Powers. Flight.
Oh, atomic absorption, molecular manipulation, and manifestation. Okay. So not like I was thinking like the shrinking and growing of atoms, or the space between them. But
no, you know who is that? That is Atom, not Captain Atom.
Okay.
Atom is the DC version of that.
I knew there was one of them, so
yes.
I knew that. I knew that.
And then we also have, guess what? We also have Atom Smasher. which
Oh,
is another DC character. He's going to be in. Um, Black Adam.
Okay.
That time, Adam spelled A-D-A.
Lots of Adams.
Yes. And another Charlton character, Vic Sage, who is known as the Question. He's been in like the Justice League cartoons. He's teamed up with Blue Beetle. He was created by Steve Ditko as well. So Steve Ditko worked a lot with Charlton Comics for a bit too. So just fun stuff there. So those characters came into DC late, and I think it's funny Judo Master and Peacemaker both appear in this one.
Yeah. Again, like you said, bringing some more obscure characters from the comics into the DCEU.
It's all good, yeah. Okay, last thoughts here. Season 2, we've kind of talked about maybe being his focus on overcoming his dad's like ghost. But let's talk some spin-off ideas. We've heard that he's had another TV show that he's working on for Suicide Squad. Is it anything to do with Task Force X being outed, or is it like a Ratcatcher Bloodsport team up? What would you want to see, and what do you think it is?
For personal reasons, I would love to see a Ratcatcher and Bloodsport team up. That would be fantastic. You know, expand on that relationship more. I would love to see that, and because especially since Bloodsport seems to have overcome his fear of rats at this point in time, or at least is starting to. So I think that could be really fun to see. Maybe a bit more, even more humor with that. Kind of fits with James Gunn's sort of style, at least in the DCEU that we've seen so far. I think I feel like I could see it being the Amanda Waller type story, though, because of the end of Peacemaker. So I'd be fine with that as well, but I would much rather see Bloodsport Ratcatcher 2 team up. I feel like the obstacle to that is making sure you can get Idris Elba to commit to that. Yeah. So that's the challenge.
He's done TV before. He's done Luther.
Yeah. So it's a challenge, but it's not like an insurmountable one. So I'm hoping that's what it is. I wouldn't mind something about King Shark either. You know, that would be kind of
tough with the CG.
Yeah, that's the issue. Like, we saw that with Spider-Man No Way Home. So the CGI budget eats up things quickly. But I don't know what other direction they could kind of take it in, because, Polka Dot Man, they could do a prequel, I guess. No sequel possible there with that about him. But yeah, I feel like the Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2 dynamic was too solid at the end of the Suicide Squad to not follow it up with something else.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have to move away from the Suicide Squad name because the movie didn't do well financially. The previous movie kind of had some bad connotations, in the general public. Maybe make one that's called Task Force X, or, you can do other things with it. And before we go, Luis Duran, general manager at HBO Max, took to Twitter to celebrate the success of Peacemaker's first season and responded to John Cena's social media post saying how he already knows that season 2 will be one of the great releases of next year. So maybe a 2023 release.
Ooh, okay.
For Peacemaker. That would be pretty quick. I mean, Gunn's got to finish doing Guardians. He's got the Guardians holiday special that is filming at the same time as Guardians, and then he's going to be in post-production of that. And if the rumors are true and he wrote season 2 already, then they just have to kind of set aside time to film it and put it in post-production, and it could definitely air sometime in 2023. I doubt it'll be early January like this one was, but maybe a summer or fall release for next year.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope.
I hope so. I seem to remember hearing, like, in an interview, James Gunn knowing, like, I kind of know the direction of the story, but depends how accurate is that, or was he just really bored in quarantine and instead of just writing one season of TV, before it was greenlit. What if it was 2? Maybe it was 3. Who knows how far it goes?
Or when he goes home from Guardians, does he just start writing Peacemaker?
Yeah.
Because he's not working there all day. So if he's done a 15-hour day or a 10-hour day, and he goes back and he's like, "No, I got some spare time. Why don't we start writing some of this?" He could definitely get it done. He seems to turn in scripts pretty quick. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I think that no matter what, it's going to be great. And we also know that after Guardians, he has said that he wants to just focus on TV for a year or so. So, I mean, we know for a fact that he's not planning on any other projects in between.
Yes, and that other
Guardians and
other series that he was working on, he's not writing and directing each one. I think he's going to be more of a producer role.
Oh, okay.
This one he's writing and directing everything of season 2. He says so. I do think that can help kind of push this forward even more.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to prioritize it. If it is really HBO Max's biggest show of all time so far, then I think they're going to be like, yeah. And this is what these weekly releases can do. It grew 44% from the premiere to the finale because of the hype of the buildup every week, where we're able to theorize and I'm able to ask you, okay, what do you think? Was Goff lying? Is Myrn going to be a good butterfly? We were able to theorize all that kind of stuff. When a binge release comes, it's like, okay, what episode are you on? Oh, you've seen episode 6? All right, we'll wait until episode 8. And you can't really talk about it.
Yeah. And the buzz diminishes so quickly from those as well. Because everyone, it's almost like an arms race, everyone is rushing through to avoid spoilers because, so as soon as it releases, if it releases on midnight, all of the fans of that are going to watch immediately and then just keep watching it. Just so they avoid spoilers. But then, it stays in the cultural lexicon for I don't know, half of a week or a week. Ozark had a new season release all at once, right?
Never heard about it.
Right. Yeah. I heard about it because of a tweet talking about how little people had heard about it. So that's that it just shows that limitation. And it's the same thing with Marvel with their shows was doing, a weekly release makes these into more of a cultural type of event that people come together and think about. And, I like it so much better than the binge type of episode of shows. I don't like the idea of just having to watch everything immediately at risk of everything being spoiled. Because then if you make it halfway through and someone spoils it for you, you're like, well, now what am I supposed to do? I spent all this time watching it and I don't even get the same level of payoff. That kind of sucks.
Right.
So I love how they did the weekly release and it shows the power of it.
I really like that they did 3 to start off because I feel like those first 3 feel like the first act where, okay, we know the butterfly thing. We know what butterflies are, and we know that they're taking over USA and Earth. We saw that at the end of that third one. It's like, okay, wow, this is a real threat. And then we're able to build upon that. Where, I'm really worried about Stranger Things coming back because I'm like, I have to sit there and be like, okay, when does it come out? Oh, the 27th or whatever. I have to, okay, my weekend is, I have to watch Stranger Things so I don't get spoiled, right? And then you can't talk about it. Because then what I like about this is, like I said, after each week, we were able to text each other and say, okay, what about this? What about that? With Stranger Things, like I said, it's going to be like, okay, well, how far are you? Oh, episode 4? I'm on episode 5. And then after you're done watching it, it's like, well, what'd you think about that one? Oh, what episode was that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, when they did that thing? Oh, yeah, that was cool. And then you're done talking about it. There was... You can't theorize as you go. And I'm sure that's why they're splitting up some of their shows now. Ozark did a volume 1. Their Pokemon releases have been 4 episodes at a time. Their the Stranger Things is going to be broken up into 2. I think they want to try to... Netflix is trying to get that to sustain. Let's sustain the conversation about it. Well, I've heard a lot of people talk about Squid Game. Again, it goes along when I'm at work. I didn't watch Squid Game because it seems too graphic, but and I don't have time for it.
I just find it funny that it's too graphic, and then we've been talking about the Suicide
Well, this
Squad.
is funny too. Like, I can
Yeah,
handle
no,
funny
I get it.
differently.
I get
But-
it. I'm the same way. Yeah.
You know, talking about Squid Game, those conversations happened almost the exact same way that I'm saying it. I have people next to me at work that they're like, "Did you watch Squid Game yet?" Yeah, I watched the first one. Wait until you get to episode 3. And you're like, well, okay, obviously something big happens in episode 3. But now I have to catch, and then you catch up to it. Okay, I saw episode 3. I'm on 6 now. You know, it's like, well,
Yep.
okay, yeah. So it's like this, you can't actually have a conversation about the show water cooler style the way you can with, did you watch Peacemaker last night? Yeah, I did. What about this? What do you think's going to happen with the butterflies? What do you think's going to happen with this? It's a totally different thing. And I think Disney had it right. I think Disney posted something too, or one of the third-party apps posted something about how Book of Boba Fett grew from its premiere. So it's that word of mouth that continues to grow it, but then people can actually talk about it and actually have a nice sit down and figure it out, which is nice because I like having these conversations. And like when we did, you know, I'm talking about it as if people don't listen to our other episodes, but you know, we've done reviews for What If and reviews for Hawkeye where I was able to sit there and theorize what's going to happen, and those episodes do very well on this show because people want to hear our thoughts. They want to think themselves. I know I kept looking for Peacemaker podcasts because I wanted to hear what other people thought, and sadly there wasn't like any.
There's the
fan-driven
official
one.
show podcast, but there's not much theorizing on there. So
Exactly. So, and those are a little bit more sanitized when they're the official,
right.
like HBO one or whatever, you know. Those two hosts are just like, yeah, we love it. You're like, do they really? I don't know, you know, but it's their job to talk about it right now. So for us, you know, at least we know it's just because we really enjoyed the show. And like I said, we don't really talk a lot of DC on here, but we both really love Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, that I was like, we have to do an actual show about it where we can sit here and talk about it because it's just so much fun. Yeah, but that's Peacemaker and that's Suicide Squad. So I guess we'll see where it goes from here. Other DC stuff I'm really excited for. I'm going to be doing a Batman breakdown on here. That's less than 2 weeks away already. I got my tickets for that, so I'm excited to go see. I've been starting to watch all the press stuff with Robert Pattinson, so, which I didn't do with Spider-Man, honestly, because I felt like it feels different when this is like, this Batman is totally unrelated to any of the other ones. So I'm trying to, I'm getting hyped up with like this interpretation. But with No Way Home, like I was just too scared about like, well, one, I knew they weren't going to say anything in these press releases anyway, because it's just like, oh, you'll see if there's 3 of us. Like, there was nothing to gain from that. But also it was already like the 25th, 27th movie of the MCU that I kind of already knew what I was expecting. With this Batman movie, it's like, I don't know what I'm expecting. This is going to be fun. This is going to be awesome. And then we have Black Adam in July, which is going to introduce Dr. Fate, one of my favorites. He just looks badass. I got a Funko Pop-O for Christmas. And then it also has the rest of the Justice Society in there, which is Atom Smasher, Cyclone, and who am I blanking on right now? Dr. Fate. Atom
Unfortunately,
Smasher.
I can't help you with that.
Hawkman. I was blanking on
Okay.
Hawkman. And then we have The Flash in November, and then we have Aquaman 2 in December. So I'll be doing stuff for each of those as well. I really want to find somebody to bring on for Superman and Lois because I really enjoyed that show. I want to just kind of talk about that show, kind of like how we did with Peacemaker. Like I'm not doing a week by week thing, but just kind of like a show as, show so far or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of the future of this so far. I was actually thinking of making this its own feed as well, just for people that wanted to find this without shifting through 30 recaps of MCU shows as well. So I might just make a separate feed that these go up on as well if anybody's interested in that. But yeah, if you want to give us a follow right now, we're just on the MCU feed. So that would be Marvel Plus Recaps at gmail.com. You can give us your thoughts on Peacemaker, Suicide Squad. Twitter at TO Infinity Saga. Facebook.com/Infinity Saga Beyond. And for Marvel stuff, I really want to get into the Moon Knight. We're going to be, Moon Knight is about a month away. I'm really setting up where I'm going to read some Moon Knight and do like a little book club thing where we just talk about the issues. I'll try to find something that's on Hoopla for people that have library cards. You can check out stuff on Hoopla for free, and you can read along. So that way, if you listen to this, you're not just listening to me talk about a comic you didn't read, but you can actually kind of read it and then listen to my thoughts on it. And Doctor Strange trailer just came out. What'd you think of that, Jack?
Oh, I'm so excited for it. I mean, hey, you know that Doctor Strange is one of my favorite superheroes, along with Ant-Man. Those two are like my favorite too. So I am so excited to see the new Doctor Strange movie. I'm actually I'm ordering a vintage Doctor Strange shirt, like his original comics appearance, to wear to that premiere when that comes out, because I'm very much looking forward to it. There's so much incredible stuff in there. Could we get the Illuminati? Could we? I think we are. I think we are, and I'm excited. Yeah, I mean, his voice is kind of unmistakable. So I think.
Did you hear what he said? People were asking if that was him, and he said, "Well, no, people have been doing my imitation of my voice for a long time now."
Yeah, that sounds a lot like the
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, the Andrew Garfield responses to things. But it also looks like we might get Deadpool in the MCU now, which
Captain Carter.
Yep, I love the Deadpool movies, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Way better than Ryan Reynolds did as Green Lantern, for sure. So that's
like the Green Lantern movie.
It's fine. I think that he did better as Deadpool than as Green Lantern.
Yes,
I think especially when you consider the 2009 version of Deadpool. Which we won't talk about him because he can't talk about himself. So but yeah, it just looks like there's so much excitement going through in here, and I also like it because it looks like it's setting up sort of a dynamic with like gender issues as well, which I always like it when movies, especially superhero movies, take on those sorts of issues. Like Falcon and the Winter Soldier addressed racism pretty well for a 6-episode Marvel superhero show. But I like how they're bringing in some of the stuff that Wanda has been experiencing since Civil War, with being seen as a monster whenever she does anything, where Doctor Strange is seen as a hero when he does his stuff. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. And I'm also hoping Mordo gets a bigger role, because in all of the early Doctor Strange comics, he is Doctor Strange's arch nemesis. He is like, and I'm interested to see how they adapt that, since the Ancient One is no more, and the Ancient One is kind of the main impetus for Mordo to be an enemy of Strange in the comics. But I'm so hyped up for it. I can't wait.
I sadly think it's not our Mordo we see. I think you can see him in the Illuminati shot, unfortunately, the long hair Mordo. So I think that most of them, maybe they're saving them for the third one, and we'll get kind of like different Mordo here. As long as they don't like kill him off and then bring in this other Mordo, because they set him up for a big story arc in the MCU. But yeah, that's in May. Definitely having you on for that movie. Definitely gonna have you on for that one.
I'll probably be in the theaters every day of the week seeing that one.
So it'll be tough to schedule you. I'll be like, okay, can you go between the 7 and 10 showing? Can I can I fit you in here?
Yeah. Maybe not then, but between the 11th and 12th ones, I might have a little bit of time. I can set up the recording studio in the theater, maybe.
In the theater,
Yeah. just between showings. Just all right. I'm taking a quick 3-hour break to go see it again. I'll come back with some more thoughts in 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. That's the next movie that we have here, and then Thor: Love and Thunder, and then Black Panther.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see if that wraps up in time.
Yeah.
That's the big.
The Marvels got moved to next year, right? Yeah. So it'd be Black Panther.
Yeah. She-Hulk, I think, is this summer. Supposedly, it's not a confirmed date.
We don't really know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so lots of stuff to look forward to. I'm also going to have Jack on. We're bringing back Behind the Dreams podcast. So if you're a Disney fan, we're going to talk some Disney World stuff. You can check that out. That'll be mostly a bi-weekly release. Definitely not trying to put too much on my plate weekly.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking Peacemaker and Suicide Squad. And I hope everybody enjoyed that talk. And we'll see you next time when I talk the Batman, or, if you want to listen to the Marvel stuff, we have some great Moon Knight pre-content coming up here. And I hope everyone enjoys that.